This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome to the PR Training Lab. This is where I take one lucky winner and I create a custom training plan recorded live on the show. This is how you can get to know me a little bit better, get inside my head, and understand my process of creating custom training plans for athletes all over the world. At this point, I have literally created thousands of custom training plans that have helped many runners around the world get their personal bests in their races and in their running. So I would love to do this for you. I'm roughly doing these about once a month, and they are turning out to be some of the most popular episodes. So if you would like to enter to win a free training plan created live on the show, there's 2 steps. All you have to do is write an Apple Podcast review. This is so important to helping the show reach more runners just like you. And I read every single one. Super important for the longevity of this show. Once you write your Apple Podcast review, you then go to theplantedrunner.com/PRLab, and that's where you can enter to win. Or if you just want to get your custom training plan, you don't want to worry about being entered into a contest, I'll make you a custom training plan at theplantedrunner.com/plans. Now, for this episode, you can follow along with the questions that I ask each runner. I have all of these questions in the show notes. And for this particular episode, I am going to be making a custom plan for Laura. And this is not a normal marathon plan or half marathon plan. This is a custom off-season plan. Now, those are a little bit different, and I'll share the link of where to get those. It's different because it is very different for every person. It's not just, hey, we're training for a marathon where I have kind of a formula for the marathon. This is going to be highly specialized because everyone has different goals. Everyone is going to be training for something slightly different in the off season. So it's not formulaic. It is very custom to each person. So I have a different process, and I wanted to kind of share that with you today. So let's get into the custom training plan for Laura. Laura is 47 years old, and she learned about me on Instagram. If you are not following me on Instagram, why not? You can do that at The Planted Runner. And on Instagram, I have been lately sharing a lot of fun things. I'm a little silly on Instagram. At first, I was very informative and tried to teach as much as possible on Instagram, and I still try to do that. But I think Instagram has become a place where it's more about entertainment and fun and sharing things that are meaningful with your friends. So I've definitely been having fun with Instagram lately, trying to show my sillier side, but if you really want to learn a lot more about running and how to become a better runner, then you got to come to this podcast, or you need to sign up to be on my mailing list where I have a weekly newsletter, which shares a lot more real tips. But Instagram has definitely been a place for fun lately. So if you're into that, definitely give me a follow at The Planted Runner. All right, back to Laura. What is the date of your race if you have one? And she says November 8th. So I wonder what marathon that is going to be. What is the goal? She wants to break 4 hours. So 4 hours translate into about 9:10 per mile or 5:42 per kilometer. And the race that she is training for is Indy Monumental. Okay, this is in Indianapolis, Indiana. This is a great course for running a fast time. It's mostly flat. And in November, hopefully the weather will be nice and cool. So I've never personally run this race, but I've trained a lot of marathoners who have, and they all say it's a really well-run course and it's a great one for speed. So that is a good one. She says that she needs an 8-week plan before that starts. Great idea, Laura. A lot of people get kind of lost in between marathon cycles. So if you have a spring race and a fall race, there's going to be, depending on the schedule, there's going to be a couple of months where you don't necessarily know what to train for. It's too early to train for a marathon, but you don't want to take so much time off that when the next marathon cycle comes along that you have lost fitness. So what do you do in between? And that's what we're going to get into today. She wants to get stronger and faster. Okay, so strength and speed, they go together. So you can get stronger, obviously, by lifting more weights and doing more strength training. And that is great in between cycles of marathon training because you can't really devote a lot of time to strength training when you're deep into marathon running because you're too tired from running so much and you don't want to try to train like a weightlifter when you're trying to be a marathoner. But in between, you can mix that up. So I would definitely recommend that she do some strength training. You should be strength training all year round, of course. But when you're in an off season, that's when you can really devote more time to lifting heavier. So you don't always need to change the exercises that you're doing. I mean, a squat is a squat, right? But if you are lifting heavier, now is the time to do it versus trying to do that during a heavy weeks of running training for the marathon. So that is what I would assign her. I would give her some specific strength training, which again, not that different of a routine, but perhaps it's going to be more time. Perhaps it's going to be more often. And it's definitely should be some heavier weights to really build that strength. How long have you been running regularly? She says 4 years. So that's great. Does she prefer kilometers or miles? She wants miles. So we have imperial today. I will try to translate that to kilometers for the metric folks as well and do the best I can to do the math in my head, but I try to speak both languages here, both imperial and metric. Do you have any current or reoccurring injuries? She says no injuries. Fabulous, fabulous. If she did have some injuries, we would try to incorporate some specific strength, more PT-like work, physical therapy work to kind of bolster some of those weaknesses. What are your recent race times and distances? She said she did a spring marathon in 4:11. Now, 4:11, that's roughly 9:35 per mile or 5:57 per kilometer. And she said her goal was to break 4 hours, which is 9:10 per mile or 5:42 per kilometer. So let's see. She's trying to chop 11 minutes off her marathon time between the spring and the fall races. Is that possible? Well, of course it's possible. Is it possible for Laura? Well, I don't know. But seeing it as she's only been running for 4 years, I would say it's more likely that she can do it. When you've been running for decades, is it possible to cut big chunks off your marathon time? Typically not as likely, unless you're doing something very different. So when you're training the same way for years and years and years, the improvement is going to be less and less and less. And this is not really because of age. Age is always a factor, of course, but it's more about your training. So if you start at, a certain point and you improve over a decade, you can make big jumps at the beginning because it's mostly the training adaptations. But as you get more experienced, the amount of minutes that you can shave off your marathon time is going to be smaller and smaller. But you never know. The other thing about marathons is that we're putting our eggs into one tiny little basket, and you never know what the conditions are going to be on race day. You never know if you're going to get sick or if things in your life are going to derail your training. And so our marathon finish times don't always reflect our training or our fitness, just because we could have some bad luck on race day. So as we get more experienced, we are going to hopefully have better strategy with our marathon. So that is going to be a big jump in our times, hopefully. And we may have better courses. So I don't know what her spring marathon was, but let's say it was on a hilly course, or let's say she had a hot day. That will increase the chance that she will do better in Indianapolis because it is a fast and flat course, and hopefully she'll get a cool day. But if she gets hot weather, if she gets bad luck, then no, is it going to be possible to improve that? It's going to be less likely. So 11 minutes is a big jump, but it's, there's so many factors involved in whether it's possible that I can't say whether it's possible only knowing about one of her other races. But again, if she's only been training for 4 years, I would say that she's got a good shot at it. How many miles do you typically run per week? She said 30 to 40 miles in marathon training. So that translates to 48 kilometers to 60 kilometers per week. And she says a little less in between marathon cycles. So 30 to 40 miles or 50 to 65 kilometers, that's decent for marathon training. I would say that the majority of recreational runners are somewhere in that zone. And for most people, that is perfectly adequate. Now, if you can run more safely and you don't get injured or overly tired and you eat enough to support it, I would say if you could bump up the mileage a little bit to 50 miles per week, that's usually going to be better. Is that the answer for everybody? Absolutely not. Is that the answer in an off season? Probably not. Okay. So in the off season, we generally don't want to increase mileage too much, especially if we're working on speed and strength, because we can go up when she hits marathon training. For a speed cycle, I want to stay the same or even go down in mileage. Now, why? Why would I have her run less? Because I want her to run faster. Okay. We've got to pick which lever we're going to pull here. And right now we want to focus on speed. So as you go down in distance and you go up in speed, you're going to run less miles per week, or at least you probably should. Sprinters are not running 100-mile weeks, right? The elites, they are focusing on speed and strength. The Olympians that you see running under 400 meters, they barely run a mile all at once, right? So they are focused on that short, explosive speed. And that's what we want to do in our off season. Now, I'm not going to train her like she is Gabby Thomas, right? We're not going to train her like a sprinter, but we are going to kind of flavor her training to be a little more speed focused and a little less long, slow distance. Now, I'm going to still keep up her long runs because she is going to go into a marathon cycle in 8 weeks. I'm not going to drop her down completely, but for most people, especially someone in this fitness level, I probably don't want too many long runs to be above 10 miles, which is 16 kilometers. Maybe we'll get up to 12 or 14 mile long runs by the end, but I would love to see her long runs stay about 10 or 12 miles because I want her to be fresh and fast. And a lot of marathoners, they really struggle with this. I don't want to cut my long run. I'm like, well, you don't have to, but you're not really going to be able to produce the explosive power that you should during an off season. So I want to limit the long run and I want to limit the weekly mileage. We can go ahead and bump those up once we get into the 14 weeks of pure marathon training. But for this cycle, I want to stay short and fast, but still keep up that fitness. What is the highest amount of weekly mileage she's ever run? That's 40 miles, which is about 65 kilometers. So that tracks with what she had said before. What days of the week does she currently run? Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. So that is great. 4 days a week is usually very healthy for people in their 40s who are recreational runners. Some people will go up higher than this. I don't recommend going lower than that if you're really focused on performance or if you're focused on marathon training. It's just not enough. unless you are doing some other kind of aerobic training in place of your running. So if you're also a cyclist and you spend 2 days on the bike, then you can get away with 3 runs per week. But generally, if your focus is running and running performance, I don't like to see people running less than 4 times a week for the marathon or for people who are mostly marathon training. What day of the week do you prefer your long run? She likes that on Sunday. So that's great. I love to have people run the day before their long run. It's a shorter run for the most part. And I like to keep that up even in the off season. I think it's a good habit. It makes your long run more effective. And then it also spreads out your recovery for after the long run instead of before. I would like to see you resting the day after your long run to really absorb all that good training that you did 2 days in a row, instead of resting the day before to prep for your long run. Okay. It's far better to think of your long run as 2 days long and then get some really good recovery the day after. How long is your average most recent long run? 10 miles, which is 16 kilometers. Let's keep it there for the most part. Again, we might bump her up to 12 or 14, but for this 8 weeks, if we could really focus on speed, we don't need to focus on a really long run. What pace is a very easy effort for you? She said 10:30 per mile. I love that, which that translates to about 6:30 per kilometer. So that tracks. That's about a minute and a half or so, roughly slower than her marathon pace. So I like to see that. That's good. And we've got speed days Tuesday, Thursday, and a full rest day on Monday. Again, that works perfectly because she's resting the day after her long run, not the day before. What are your non-negotiables? She needs to have her long runs on the weekends. Perfect. That works. All right. What are your favorite kinds of running workouts? Long, slow runs. Okay. Just like a marathoner should. She loves her long, slow runs, so she's probably not going to love that I am shortening her long runs or that she's not going to have super long runs. But again, we're training differently in the off season. We want to be a more well-rounded runner. So what I like to do in these off-season plans is do what I call a kitchen sink. Throw everything at the runner, make it different than marathon training. So marathon training, we're really focused on endurance. We're focused on building that stamina, which is speed plus endurance. So in a kitchen sink plan, I'm throwing everything at you. So I'm going to do VO2 max workouts, which are, that can be a variety of things, but it might be mile repeats or it might be short intervals like 200s. I'm definitely going to give you some hill work for some explosive power. I am definitely going to throw some mixed workouts in, maybe some 5K things. So it's going to be a little bit of everything but the kitchen sink. And what that's going to do is you're going to be able to train in different ways than you would be if you were training for a marathon. So training for a marathon is basically an inverted triangle. You start out really broad and you narrow your focus as you get closer to the race. So you get more and more specific, like you're sharpening a pencil. With a kitchen sink, it's going to be all over the place. You're going to do a little bit of this. You're going to do a little bit of that. It's going to be very different, and it's going to touch on all the systems that we are trying to develop. And that keeps you more well-rounded. It's not specifically focused. It's very broad because we are trying to touch on all the other things. Now, is training like a sprinter going to help a marathoner? Absolutely. And training like a marathoner would help a sprinter to some extent. So we are not trying to be the best at 400-meter repeats, but we are training like that just so we can get that higher level of speed just a little sharper so that when it is time to go back to the good old standard of training like a marathoner, you're just a little fitter than you were before in all the different ways. So I like to give people the kitchen sink or everything but the kitchen sink in this off period, even if they don't like it. And again, that is going to bring your fitness to a higher level. Now, if you only focused on endurance during this time off and you just did a bunch of long, slow runs, that is going to help your aerobic fitness. Any kind of running helps your aerobic fitness, but I would argue you're not going to be as well-rounded and perhaps not even that much fitter when you start your cycle. It's just more of the same. And that is a way to plateau, frankly. So we want to have different training. We want to train some speed. We want to train some strength. We want to do the things that we don't have time for in a marathon build. I'll be back with more from the PR Training Lab right after this. This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome back to the PR Training Lab. What are your least favorite kinds of running workouts, or what do you struggle with most on your runs? And she says, short intervals. Well, I'm going to give you some short intervals. Sorry, Laura, but if you struggle with it, then that probably means we need to get a little better at it. So she doesn't say why she struggles with the short intervals. They are over quick. But maybe it's because they are really challenging to do. The first one you might be okay with, but then as the workout goes on, they get harder and harder. So the key to doing intervals is to sandbag or go a little easier on the first ones, even if it's slower than you want. You don't hit your paces at first. That's okay. And then stay even across the entire workout. So even splits are better than starting off real fast and fading. We want to learn how to extend our discomfort zone a little bit longer. So that means in order to be fast at the end, we need to be a little bit slower at the beginning, or at least the effort needs to be better at the beginning, a little more controlled. Now, this is really the same strategy that we want in the marathon too. We want to be very controlled at the beginning so that we can have a strong finish. Even if the pace is completely even every single mile, the effort is always going to rise with distance. And the same is true when we are running a bunch of short intervals. So keep the effort in the medium range at the beginning so that when the effort rises, your pace is even across the board. So you will get better at these intervals, I promise you, with practice. So try not to be intimidated by the speed and speed workouts. You might just surprise yourself. What kinds of non-running physical activities or cross-training do you do each week, and when do you do them? She says hot yoga 1 to 3 times per week. Okay, I have recently been getting into hot yoga too, Laura, so I can relate. It depends on what kind of yoga you're doing. There is some very relaxing, restorative yoga that's great for runners because it is more like mobility, flexibility work. And then there is hot yoga that is very fast, very strength-based, and might be a little too much when you're in a marathon build. But again, we're not in a marathon build right now. We can be more flexible, literally, and we can do some more things. So hot yoga is going to be just fine. Make sure that you are hydrating because this is a dripping, sweaty workout. You definitely want to make sure you're hydrating for this, but I would say that hot yoga is actually really good for heat training. I haven't seen any specific scientific literature on this, of course, but anytime you're sort of raising your temperature or getting used to exercising in hot and humid climates, your body is going to adapt and it's going to make adjustments in your physiology that's going to make it easier. You'll start sweating faster, you'll start to cool off faster, and your body is more prepared to exercise in the heat. So hot yoga, I have noticed personally, since I've been doing it for the last couple months, a few times a week, that at first it felt really, really hot, of course. And it still feels hot today, but I notice I'm not as affected by the heat. I'm still aware of it. I'm still dripping sweat every single time, but I don't feel as uncomfortable as I used to at the beginning. So if you can incorporate that into your schedule, any kind of heat, hot sauna, hot yoga, that kind of thing, you're going to be more prepared for running in the heat. And let's face it, a lot of these marathons these days are getting hotter and hotter. And if you're prepared for it, you will do better than if you're not. So both mentally and physically. So if you can train in the heat, whether it's just running outside in the summer, I would encourage you doing that. I just did a podcast recently about training in the heat. So listen to that one first if you want to try it. Back to Laura. Do you strength train? She says sometimes, but not regularly. Uh-oh. Okay. We got to change that. We need to change that for all runners. All runners need to strength train, period. End of story. If you are not strength training, at a minimum, you are leaving speed on the table. Even worse, you are setting yourself up for injury. So we want to do some strength training. I would say minimum twice a week, preferably 3 times a week. Frequency does matter. So, instead of spending an hour and a half once a week, if you did 3 half-an-hour sessions, which is the same amount of time, I would argue that the 3 times a week shorter sessions are better than once a week. Frequency does matter. And if we are trying to get stronger for running and protect our joints and build more muscle mass for health and longevity, everybody in the world needs to be strength training. Period. End of story. If you want to age well, if you want to have a long health span, I would argue that strength training is more important than running. I know, as a running coach, I just said that. Strength training is probably more important than running. If you are not strength training, you need to start. And an in-between phase, when you're in between marathon running, is the perfect time. So I've got some videos on my YouTube channel, which is, of course, The Planted Runner, that can help get you started. I have some ones that don't even have weights if you don't have weights. But if you don't have weights and you don't have a membership to a gym, I highly recommend that you change that. There are cheap gym memberships that you can join, or you can invest in some dumbbells and you can do it at home. But I cannot emphasize this enough. If it's not even about running, it's about longevity and how you move through the world. Strength training is non-negotiable. Okay. So pick up some weights and put them down a couple times a week. What are your biggest struggles with nutrition? She says, I'm not sure if I'm getting enough protein as a vegan. All right, protein. I have done some episodes on how much protein you should have as a runner, whether you're vegan or not. But, and there's lots of people out there talking about protein. So the whole foods plant-based communities say that every plant has protein, which is true. And you don't need to worry about how much protein you're eating. You'll get enough if you simply get enough calories. And then you have the people who are talking about you need, 200 grams of protein a day. You need 150 grams of protein a day. Who is right? Well, I would say, like most things, the true answer is probably in between. I think that if you are vegan or plant-based, you do need to pay attention to protein. If you are just going to eat pasta and vegetables, that is probably not enough as a runner who is aging or who is trying to preserve or add lean muscle mass. It's simply not enough to get the minimum RDA of protein. So it's probably somewhere in between. It's probably 1.2 or 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. I would not say it's as high as 1 gram per pound. So if you're 150 pounds, do you need 150 grams of protein? I would say that is on the high end. It's probably about 75% of that. Perhaps it's around 100 if you are a 150-pound runner. I would say don't get that granular with it unless you're really struggling to add muscle. And the other thing is, as runners, running is catabolic, meaning it uses tissue. We are burning tissue. Now, hopefully that is fat, but let's face it, when we lose weight, we are not losing just fat. We will lose muscle at the same time. So don't want to get too much into that, but the point I want to make with this is that if you are trying to gain lean muscle, you need to have enough protein or it simply won't happen. So yes, when you're plant-based, think about what protein you're going to add. So most of the time, the best protein sources are going to be soy-based. So tofu, tempeh, soy curls, things like that, edamame. But there are lots of other protein sources that are cheap and great for you. So beans, lentils, nuts and seeds are great too. They are higher in fat, but they are great to supplement. Lots of great choices. If you want to use some processed meat products that are on the market, I would say don't be afraid of using those, but look at the ingredient list. Make sure that it's not ridiculously weird. You want to have stuff that is mainly whole foods or at least close to it. And then I would say don't be afraid of protein powders. I use protein powders literally every day, but I make sure that it's a good protein powder that's not full of weird stuff. So it's not something that you need to be afraid of. If you don't want to use protein powders, you don't have to, but I wouldn't demonize them either just because it is processed. It's very different than potato chips, right? It's a different kind of processing. So I think a lot of people are very afraid of anything that's been processed. And I would say, let's look at this holistically. Let's do a cost benefit analysis here. Protein powder is a cheap way of getting your protein, and it's an easy and convenient way of getting your protein. And if you don't want to do that and you would rather take more time to use more whole foods, then great, do that. You don't have to have protein powder, but I would say don't demonize it. If you're really struggling, try it. You don't have to eat it every single day. You don't have to eat it at all, but think about ways that get you closer to your goal without, risk. I don't think protein powders are evil. In fact, I think they can be an important part of your diet when you need something that is quick and convenient. What are your struggles mentally when it comes to success and performance? She says she's too old to get faster, that she has missed her prime. Well, at 47, Laura, you have not missed your prime. If you had been training as an Olympian your whole life, are you going to get faster at 47? Of course not. But you've only been training for 4 years. So there's plenty of time to get better and better. You will not be slowing down if you have not trained for years and years and years. Are you in your biological prime? Of course not. But does that even matter? No, because the vast majority of us didn't train to our peak potential when we were at our biological prime. So there's lots and lots of ways to get better at running and faster at running, even if you're in your late 40s or 50s. Well into your 60s. So it really just depends on what your running age is more than your biological age. So you've got plenty of time. What are you hoping to learn or gain in this training cycle? She says, I love marathon training, but I want to spend some time working on my weaknesses before it's time to train for the marathon. Fabulous. That is what we are going to do. So we are going to get you lifting weights, and we are going to be working on those short intervals that you don't like. So, sometimes we have to do things we don't like if we want to get better at something we do like. So we got to eat our vegetables, literally and figuratively here. Anything else you'd like to share that would be helpful to your success? And she wrote, I love your podcast. Will you do more interviews soon? Oh, thank you, Laura. I'm really glad that you're a fan of the podcast. I am planning to do more interviews soon. So if you are a long-term listener, you might notice that I haven't done too many interviews lately. And the reason is mainly because I really want to build up a library for you to cover just about every running topic. So if you want to learn about something, you have a library of episodes that you can choose when it's right for you. And I haven't been scheduling as many interviews because I really want to check all the boxes, but I realize that interviews are dynamic and fun, and there is more to learning about running than just what's in my head. I want to share more of the other voices in running. So yes, I will be doing more interviews soon, but I will stick to the basics as well and keep doing the more educational solo episodes as well as episodes like this for the PR Training Lab. All right, Laura. Well, I will get to work on making your schedule for you, your kitchen sink in between schedule. If you are listening and you want a in between or an off season training plan, I've put the link to those in the show notes. It's a little hard to say the link because I didn't make it a cute link. So it is theplantedrunner.com off season training plans, but in between each word there is a dash. So it's off-season-training-plans, which I realize is not really easy to say, but if you don't remember what it is, I will share the link in the show notes. So that is it for this episode of the Planted Runner, the PR Training Lab. Again, if you would like to enter to win, you've got to do two things, and that is write an Apple Podcast review, tell me and the world why you love the show, and then go to theplantedrunner.com/PR Lab, and you can enter to win your very own custom training plan made by me. That's all I have for you today. Have a great run today. Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Don't forget that you can enter to win a free custom training plan for your next race and get featured on the show. Just write an Apple Podcast review and enter at theplantedrunner.com/PR Lab. Of course, reviews are the number one way to boost this show's reach, and it's a great way to tell me what you'd like to hear next because I read every single one. Have a great run today.